years, and I was presiding over juvenile cases for youth. At the time, I made my global pitch project. I've since moved back to adult court. But what I realized is we can't protect our youth by keeping them in a bubble, but we can empower them. And we can give them a sense of self and identity so that if they are subject to things such as deep fake nudes, that they know that they're supported and they can get through and not self-harm and feel alone and get bullied. And this is my global pitch project. Next slide, please. And so I explained to them it's a pitch project, but we're sponsored through Filipino Women's Network. Next slide. And it's empowering Philam youth through leadership and music. So one thing youth like, right, is they sometimes can't already yet put into words what they're feeling, what they're going through. Obviously, adolescence and young adulthood is very emotional. But if you know youth, they love music. And they can feel and live their emotions through music. And so we can connect with them about their Philam identity, their Philippine ancestry, and their American heritage, and mold them into what they believe they project as each individual. It's different. It's different. Each youth has a different perspective of who they are. But if they can have a stronger sense of self, then they are not as subject to bullying and harm and that anxiety that comes with feeling alone. Next slide, please. And so that was the problem when we're talking about self-discovery, especially for Philippine diaspora. For youth in the United States, and for my region in particular, Southern California, there is a struggle with self-identity and discovery and who am I? And it's hard because when you apply for college, you can say I'm a Filipino American or I'm Philippine ancestry living in America, and then what? How does that make you you? I mean, because you have an ancestry, what is it about your ancestry that makes you particularly passionate about this, that, or the other? Or present that this are your loves, your likes, or these are your dislikes. And you don't always have to embrace certain parts of Philippine culture in the way that your parents did. You embrace it for yourself because you're the one that's living your life. And you have to have that confidence in it. Next slide, please. And so we created opportunities. So I'm going to collaborate. I'm in phase 1 of my workshops. We're doing the workshops to empower the youth. The second phase is going to create a music video with hip-hop artists. And they're going to express and use the content from the workshops to express what these youth are going through and how they see themselves and how they incorporate Philippine core values into their identity. Next slide, please. And so we are the educational workshops. We've decided to make cohorts of different workshops. And so we're in our first cohort, finishing it up. And what I've learned is, I thought I understood core values how I was raised. And then we brought in an ethnic studies professor who actually goes across from the Philippines to the United States. So he teaches ethnic studies at Ateneo. And Dr. Fernandez also teaches at San Diego State University ethnic studies. And so he talks about core values, and it's very amorphic, so it doesn't really have a strong form. It just depends on where the person's at and how they see it. Next slide, please. And so we talk about the slides and how it actually can build leadership. The slides incorporate these core values, and each workshop has a core value. So we kind of highlight the core value that seems to come up in a lot of social science books and what Philippine culture has as far as core values, and how they come up in diaspora as well, and how they're used by youth and also immigrants that are not in the Philippines, and how they're seen by people who still live and live their lives in the Philippines. Very different approach. And what I learned was that it's different for each person, and we can't impart our idea of that onto the youth. The youth have to understand what it is and the source of where it's from, and then accept what they believe empowers them as a person. They don't have to take it for what it is. It's their right to be able to use it for themselves and be able to project it in how they feel comfortable. Because when they can talk about being Filipino in their own words, because they truly believe it, it's then that they become memorable, and it's then that they become marketable. Next slide, please. So this is a business model. We do have a set of scholars right now, and they don't want to leave. I'm on my 4th workshop, and I said, you're going to be graduating, and they're like, no, Judge, but where are you going to be? How are we going to stay connected? We want more workshops. And I said, well, you know, it's a test model, and then we'll keep in touch. And then we're going to use the content to work with the hip-hop artists. You'll be able to work with hip-hop artists and give them a sense of what you were saying in the workshops, and then we create this music video. And the goal is to have it ready for you all in San Francisco next year. Next slide, please. And so we do talk about the values, but not only just that, it's not students. I also learned, youth say, what am I getting out of this? I'm learning already in college, Judge. You want me to sit on a Saturday morning and learn some more? And I said, I'll make it worth your while. Because what you're learning about these core values in the Philippine ancestry, you're going to incorporate in your resume. You're going to incorporate in learning how to network with it. You're going to incorporate in a job interview. And then at the end of your graduation, we'll get you a headshot. Okay, so they have incentive for every single workshop. Next slide, please. And so these are the 4 workshops. We talk about kapwa, bayanihan, pakikisama, and utang ng loob. And we have the ethnic studies professor deliver the sources for which those core values in social sciences have come up. And then he kind of makes them think, and they struggle with how are they going to see that in their lives? How does it show up in their families and in their parties or in their engagement in their own communities? And then how are they going to take that and then identify it for themselves and then project it as part of who they are? Next slide. And so we do have in community engagement. So I have the professor from ethnic studies. I have 2 co-chairs that are working with me, another professor from the community colleges, and he wrote a book on hip-hop culture and sociology. And then the other person is, he works with, I think he's worked with like TFC and GMA, and he's back and forth from Canada, but he produces music, he knows hip-hop artists of Philippine ancestry, and he runs his own marketing company. So we have media campaigns. We are hoping for our first launch party so that the youth can actually meet the hip-hop artists and then kind of understand that we're going to launch the production of this music video once we finish up with their last workshop, which will be just before Thanksgiving. Next slide, please. And so, you know, there are other workshops, and we don't want to impose on the way other student workshops are conducting themselves. What we do want is to be able to produce a product that will feature youth who are learning about what their core values are for themselves. We're not trying to, you know, emulate another model where we're creating something for youth to say that there's a final product so they could see themselves in something that can be featured at several different community organization events, and to show that youth really have promise when they're empowered and they are resilient, so that when we have predators or when we have persons that want to exploit them or bully them, they have support and they know who they are. That has been a proven testament for youth in trouble. How do I know this? Because I see it day to day for 4 years in my courtroom with troubled youth. And this is my team. Dr. Vito talks about the community college scene. I like community college because they're in transition. They're not quite sure yet if they're going to head into the university level, and they're very open. They're very open to what they want to do and where they're headed. Oftentimes they do transfer to university. I have some students that are already transferred to the larger university, and they come back to finish up the workshops. They've been driving an hour and a half, one of them, for that Saturday morning to finish up. Because once they sit down and realize that we're not trying to impose on you what these values are, we are giving them to you for you to make your own, it really gets them excited. And now they don't want to stop. But so we're going to graduate them at the end of November. But I'll keep in touch with them. We probably will have follow-ups. And of course, they will be part of the process of the music video production. Next slide. And so I'm hoping you'll be ready to work with us. I am a judicial officer for the state of California, so I am precluded from actually making an official ask, but I can play you a video, and this is how I'll end. You will see our workshops in action.
So, mostly what I really hope to gain from this workshop is to feel more connected to our roots as a Filipino, like where it comes from. This is more about identity. Honestly, I'm still navigating through it, so this is helping me in the long term, and hopefully by building identity, this will serve as my foundations in my own aspirations as a designer and like other aspects of my life.
I think the last 5 years it was hard for me to establish myself with any Filipino organization. I think from this organization I'd like to learn more of like the inner mechanisms of like the Filipino perspective, have a better understanding of how it works, because I kind of strayed away from my own culture for a bit.
Our Leadership Academy is designed to foster self-discovery and culture identity, providing intensive educational workshops and community collaborations. We help youth discover their cultural roots and build leadership skills to shape their futures.
The question comes to it, is kapwa real or is it a hope? Is it the actual tangible things or is it how we imagine a potential future for Phil-Ams to be connected with?
That's the first thing. Are you going to go functional or chronological? My thoughts are based on where you're at. You may want to just go functional if you haven't had a lot of work experience and you're thinking about being considered for something professional as far as work-wise. In me, I become the embodiment of my community. I'm Bayanihan. One thing that's really most important that I think a lot of people don't understand, including lawyers in my courtroom, communication is 50% talking and 50% listening. And it's the listening part that we really should start working on.
So what does it mean when you're being told to magkasama, right? To be together, pagkikisama, to get along, or to go along, right? What are the compromises that you do to make sure everything goes well?
Here's the big thing. It's not just about your skill set. It's about, do you know yourself? Because a company or an organization, an entity, they want someone, or they want to have someone affiliate with them, a person who knows themselves, right? They don't want someone that's unsure because you become a liability.
I think they chose me as one of the applicants for a diversity hire. And I was the only Filipino American candidate. And I went in there and I had to navigate that identity of pakikisama, but also this professional idea of like, I want this job. And so just kind of navigating that in a professional space is a skill. And you know, hopefully these workshops kind of help us blend those two skills of things that we know about our identity and our history and our culture, but also the things that we might need to do in the workplace to not only bring others up, but also create our own sense of identity too.
I think my biggest takeaway from this program was that it fostered development and professionalism as well. I think it also helped me increase my awareness of not just the culture in San Diego, of being a Filipino American in San Diego, but also around the world. And I'm really appreciative of this opportunity because it gave me a lot of guidance. Growing up in San Diego with my parents, who are full Filipino, they do have advice of being in a professional setting, but they don't have advice that I would say particularly is for the niche of the professional culture in San Diego. It's very much attuned to the Filipino work culture. It's great advice, but I think this program is what really gave me that guidance to really excel in a professional environment here in the States or in San Diego.
To continue this mission, we need your support. By investing in our program, you're not just funding workshops. You're investing in the future leaders of our community.
Thank you for your donations. The donations will help the next generation of students who will participate in Brown Faces to the Sun.
I'm not sure if there's a QR code, but thank you everyone for your support.
Yes, thank you.
QR code, maybe we feedback, anything for Judge Rohanee?
Awesome. Very good.
Great feedback.
Keep on rocking.
There you go. All right. Any questions? Yes.
Okay. Hi. Just wanting to know if you have a Canadian version that we could roll out. So, and if you don't, and we could probably actually just talk, but anyway. But yeah, like I'm just wondering if that's something that we could.
Yeah,
I think it would be
we are
great to do something.
creating so it's a pilot. This is a pilot that we're finishing up and we're graduating these students, but we are creating a model, and we have to be careful. It has come up. We have youth who are suffering from mental health conditions, diagnoses, and they're feeling open and proud, and we have to navigate all those sensitivities. But the model so far seems to be working, and it's kind of built off of a model I'm using with the California Judges Association. I do this with first generation law students who are first in their families to be in college and then in law school. And it's an overall multicultural identity, and then I took it and then made it into a global pitch project for younger youth 18 to 25 in college, and Philam youth. So I think we can work together and create some similar model, and then maybe have a support network for you to implement outside of.
I think especially what I've seen in Manitoba, and a lot of the people that I've been talking to, like the second and third generations, there's a gap there. And sort of a disconnect between sort of the first generation and the second generation, and yeah, so I'm trying to kind of figure some of those pieces out, but a lot of the things about identity and who am I, and there's a lot of kind of like a sentiment of kind of like, oh, I like not wanting to identify as
Right, and so there's been a lot, the youth have talked about feeling like they've strayed away and they're not Filipino enough, or they don't understand their Philippine ancestry.
Yeah.
And I always tell them, but you're the liver of your own life. So you can decide how to change that, and you can decide what you like about it. You may not like, a lot of them are like, pakikisama is a very difficult thing for them to accept. So I asked them, how does that come up though? Where does that come up in your life, and how can you present that in a job interview? That you're an absolute team player, because you understand compromise, right? Not of yourself, but you understand group goal-oriented work models better. Not because you trained in the job field for it, but because you were raised since youth. It's part of your identity and who you are. Wouldn't you become the more marketable person? Wouldn't you want to hire that person versus the person that said, I've done this training, that, or the other? So, and you're also presenting yourself as Filipino American, and you're providing diversity. So there's so much that we can do if we can work with youth and have them accept it as their own identity.